The smell of red Texas dust mingled with manure, and the sour sweat of the screaming crowd on the bleachers was overwhelming. The sweltering heat of the southern afternoon felt like it would melt the thick layer of white paint on my face, my cheap rodeo clown makeup. I stood in the center of the arena, hands gripping the rusted steel barrel, my heart pounding like the rhythm of a death sentence being read aloud.
In front of me, the bull, black demon, was bucking wildly, its eyes glowing red like hellfire, and its breath huffing white clouds of dust. Bo, my golden child brother-in-law, had just been tossed from the monster's back and was lying motionless in the mud like a broken rag doll. My mission as a literal human shield was to distract the bull so the rescuers could get Bo out. "Do it, Jack! Distract him!"
Conrad's shout, my father-in-law, rang out from the VIP section, carrying the dictatorial command I had been forced to obey for 3 years. I stepped out of the protective barrel, waving my arms in my gaudy clothes, my mouth forced into a smile that only the devil would find funny. The bull whipped around, its hooves digging into the ground with a dry thud, signaling an unavoidable attack. Everything that followed happened like a terrifying slow-motion film. Nearly a ton of muscle lunged at me with the speed of a truck with failed brakes. I felt the heat radiating from its body before a massive impact force launched me into the air. The dry crack of my leg bone breaking rang out, sharp and clear enough to drown out the cheers of thousands. I hit the ground, the salty taste of blood filling my mouth, and a soul-shattering pain began to spread from my left thigh to my brain. Lying in the puddle of mud mixed with blood, I tried to look up at the stands. Conrad wasn't even looking at me. He was holding binoculars, closely tracking Bo's every move. Lydia, my wife, was anxiously clutching her mother's hand, her eyes only fixed on her brother with absolute concern. Not a single soul in the Ashford family looked toward the dying clown in the middle of the field. Their silence toward my pain was crueler than the bull's gore. That feeling of being abandoned, of being disregarded like a cheap sacrificial lamb, killed the last bit of hope in my heart. This was no longer an ordinary rodeo performance. This was the collapse of a blind faith. And while my body was slowly sinking into the darkness of pain, a cold fire of vengeance began to burn in my soul. They thought they could use me as a consumable tool to protect their golden child. But they forgot one important thing about clowns. We smile on the outside, but inside, we are the ones who know exactly how to tear down a circus. This match is not over yet. And the price the Ashford family will pay will be more expensive than any rodeo trophy they ever dreamed of. 3 years ago, when I stepped onto the Ashford ranch as Lydia's husband, I believed I had found a peaceful harbor. I was an industrial security engineer, a man who believed in numbers, rules, and absolute safety. But in the world of the Ashfords,
The only rule was blind worship of Bo. Bo was everything this family was proud of. A promising rodeo athlete, the one carrying true cowboy blood.
That favoritism defied all logic, all reason, and all fairness I had ever known. I could work 16 hours a day fixing machinery, improving irrigation, and managing the ranch's books, but it meant nothing. In Conrad's eyes, I was just an outsider, a submissive intellectual who was lucky to be noticed by his daughter. Just try a little harder, Jack, for the sake of the family. That refrain from my mother-in-law, Blythe, always rang out whenever they needed someone to perform the most dangerous tasks. They forced me to participate in Bo's bull riding practice sessions without any industrial standard safety gear. They treated my life like a free shield to protect the precious skin on Bo's body. My inner monologue constantly reminded me of this injustice, but my love for Lydia made me blind. I played the role of a submissive husband, a patient son-in-law, while they slowly turned me into an unpaid slave. The Ashfords' manipulation was a textbook lesson in selfishness disguised as family bond. They made me feel guilty if I wasn't willing to sacrifice for Bo's future. But behind the glamour of trophies and local fame, the Ashford Ranch was a wreck of safety violations. Conrad had cut all insurance costs for employees to funnel money into buying the most aggressive bulls for Bo to practice on. He forced me to sign ambiguous personnel papers, turning me into a contract worker instead of a family member. I remained silent, but the eyes of a security engineer had recorded it all. I had secretly kept copies of safety violation reports and the stimulant prescriptions Conrad injected into Black Demon. I never intended to use them, because I still hoped for a day when they would see my value. But this afternoon, lying on the cold ground and seeing their indifference, I understood the truth. I am not a family member. I am a consumable asset whose time for liquidation has come. The way Lydia turned her back on my pain to comfort Bo was the final knife cutting the bond between me and this clan. This gilded iron cage has slammed shut, and I am trapped inside with a shattered leg. But Conrad made a mistake in underestimating a man who lives by logic and preparation. He thought a clown didn't know how to litigate. He thought a submissive man wouldn't know how to demand justice. As I lay in the ambulance, the feeling of humiliation began to transform into a cold plan. All the evidence I collected over 3 years will no longer stay in the dark. The Ashford family loves their bulls more than human life. Then I will take away every bull they have, every acre of their land, until they have nothing left but a hollow reputation. The cage is open, not because they let me go, but because I found the key to smash it from the inside. The real game begins now, and this time I won't be the one getting gored. The pungent smell of chlorine bleach in the Charleston hospital seemed to pierce my nasal lining, reminding me of a cold and sterile reality. The steady beep of the heart monitor
echoed in the stark white room, sounding like the countdown of a suspended sentence waiting for its execution day. My left leg was suspended high on a rusted steel frame, the pins through my femur feeling like glowing iron swords gaping into my body. The pain wasn't just in the flesh, it seeped into every nerve, recalling the moment nearly a ton of monster crushed my freedom. The door burst open, not with a wife's ultimate concern, but with a cold breeze carrying the Ashford clan's fake rose scent. Conrad walked in, his cowboy suit still dusted from the arena, but his eyes were completely dry and filled with reproach. He didn't ask if I was in pain, didn't look at my mangled leg. He just stood there like a judgmental and arrogant judge. You caused Bo psychological panic, Jack. He can't participate in the finals because of that fall, and because he had to witness your pathetic scene. His words contained not a single gram of empathy for the son-in-law who nearly died to save his golden boy.
Lydia stood behind, dabbing at her makeup with a monogrammed handkerchief, her expression identical to someone looking at a broken piece of furniture that needed to be liquidated. We must keep this quiet from the press, Jack. The Ashford Ranch reputation comes first. No one can know about this safety incident. This manipulation was a textbook example of stripping away human self-respect to serve vanity.
She grabbed my hand, but those silky hands now felt as cold as a snake's skin, waiting for the chance to squeeze its prey. As they left with hollow promises about paying the medical bills, Adeline appeared from the shadows of the hallway like a loyal ghost. Adeline, my sharp lawyer friend, wasn't wearing a nurse's uniform. She wore a powerful black suit with the eyes of someone specializing in hunting dirty truths. She placed a thick stack of documents on my hospital bed, pages carrying the scent of fresh ink and hope for revenge. Jack, you were right. Black Demon was injected with high-dose stimulants before entering the arena to create more dramatic goring. Adeline flipped through the stolen veterinary records, proving Conrad intentionally turned the bull into a killing machine to boost show ratings. They don't consider you family, Jack. In the secret insurance clauses, they list you as consumable asset with no right to complain. My heart pounded painfully, not from fear, but from the indignation reaching its final boiling point. That night, Lydia returned alone, carrying a waiver of all legal claims, her voice dripping with fake sweetness.
Sign it, Jack. Then I'll take care of you forever. Family is family, after all. We shouldn't take household matters to court. I looked at the paper, then at my wife, feeling the ultimate hollowness of promises built on deception. Every one of her actions, from the touch to the coaxing tone, were manipulation tools the Ashford clan had sharpened through generations. Let me think about it for one more night, Lydia. The pain meds are making my head fuzzy, I said, my lips forcing a withered smile. She smiled with satisfaction, the smile of a hunter believing the prey was completely exhausted and had no way out. As she stepped out of the room with the triumphant rhythm of her heels, I took the phone hidden under the pillow and messaged Adeline. "Start it. Don't leave any fragment of mercy behind."
Adeline was prepared. She had documented every confession from the vet staff and filmed the ranch violating safety rules. I lay there, looking at the mottled hospital ceiling, feeling like the Ashford's gilded cage was starting to burn from its pillars. The pain in my legs seemed to subside, replaced by a terrifying serenity of one who has seen the enemy's judgment day. The Ashford family's time was running out, with every drop of IV fluid entering my veins. Every fake smile from Lydia, every arrogance from Conrad was being loaded into a legal file that would crush them. I took a deep breath, sensing the scent of freedom slowly overwhelming the hospital's bleach smell. Tomorrow, when the sun rises, the rodeo clown will no longer be the joke for them to trample. Tomorrow, the clown will become the hunter. And the kingdom of liars will be left with nothing but the ashes of greed. The Charleston County courtroom carried a cold solemnity, with its polished oak benches and the smell of old paper mixed with floor wax. Texas sunlight streamed through the tall windows, shining directly on Conrad's self-important face as he sat across from me in his most expensive cowboy suit. Lydia sat beside him, her face perfectly made up, her eyes occasionally glancing at me with fake pity, as if I were a pathetic man digging his own grave. They believed that with the Ashford clan's influence and a team of high-powered lawyers, an outsider son-in-law with a mangled leg would never stand a chance. Adeline stood up, her heels clicking decisively on the wooden floor, the sound as sharp as the cocking of an aimed gun. "Your Honor, we are not just suing over a common workplace accident." Adeline's voice rang out, calm but containing an explosive power. "We are suing over a deliberate conspiracy to cause injury and systematic negligence aimed at profiting from human life." Conrad smirked, a contemptuous smile he had used to suppress me for 3 years. But that smile began to crack when Adeline requested to show the video from the hidden security camera I had secretly installed in the bullpen. On the large screen, the image of Conrad himself injecting a cloudy liquid into Black Demon's thigh appeared in clear detail. Whispers began to spread through the courtroom like a wave of water hit by a stone. This is a high-dose central nervous system stimulant designed to turn a peaceful animal into a mad killing machine, Adeline announced the blood sample results she had secretly collected. Not stopping there, she presented the employment contract they forced me to sign while my head was clouded with pain meds in the hospital. In Supplementary Clause 14, the defendant listed the plaintiff as voluntary consumable asset, a non-existent legal term aimed at stripping away all human protection rights. Lydia jumped up, her face pale under the blush, her lips trembling to utter a rebuttal. But Sterling, my lead surgeon and also the expert witness, stepped onto the stand. Jack's injury was not an accident. It was the result of a deliberate impact force from an animal chemically altered to be extremely aggressive.
Sterling declared with a professional chill. I looked Conrad straight in the eye, seeing the arrogance in them slowly replaced by ultimate terror as he realized the trap he set had turned to tighten around his own neck.
You saw me as a clown, to be a human shield for your son, I said, my voice echoing through the courtroom, no longer carrying a trace of the old submission. But today, your own greed has turned you into the biggest joke in Texas. The jury didn't take much time to reach a final decision.
The court orders defendant Conrad Ashford and the Ashford Ranch to compensate the plaintiff in the amount of $5 million for gross safety violations and intentional injury. The judge's gavel rang out as dry as my bone breaking that day, but this time it was the sound of justice. Conrad slumped into his chair, his aged face completely collapsing as he realized he would have to sell his precious bull herd to pay the debt.
Lydia rushed toward me, trying to grab my hand with the all-too-familiar manipulative tears. "Jack, please, we're family. You can't do this to Dad." I gently removed her hand, feeling a serenity never before experienced spreading through my body. Family doesn't inject poison into monsters to have them gore each other, Lydia. I walked out of the courtroom, my wooden cane clicking on the floor, in rhythm with my own free steps.
The monster of manipulation had been crushed by the very trap it created. The Ashford clan's gilded cage was now nothing but the ruins of greed. And I, for the first time in 3 years, could breathe the salty Texas air without feeling my chest being squeezed. The sun rose high over the brilliant Texas sky, but this time the light no longer carried the heat of anger, only the warmth of a new beginning.
I stood on the porch of the Free Rider, the rehabilitation center I had poured my heart and the $5 million compensation into building. The smell of disinfectant here no longer felt cold or terrifying like my days in the Charleston hospital. It was the scent of salvation, of hope for rodeo riders abandoned by ruthless owners like Conrad.
I held the finalized divorce papers in my hand, feeling that thin piece of paper carried more weight than any rodeo medal. The phone in my pocket vibrated constantly. Messages from Lydia appeared like the final breaths of someone drowning in selfishness. "Jack, I'm having to work at a roadside cafe to make ends meet. Dad has lost everything. Please have mercy for the sake of our history."
I looked at those words and felt only a strange emptiness, no more hatred nor any trace of the old slavery. The Ashford family had to sell every precious bull, their only soul and pride, to pay for the lawsuit and safety violation fines. The once renowned Ashford Ranch was now just an empty plot of land where arrogant cheers were replaced by the sighs of bankruptcy. Conrad, the man who disregarded all safety rules and human life, now faced solitude in the very mansion being foreclosed on by the bank. Bo was also no longer the golden child of the rodeo world, once the truth about injecting stimulants into bulls was exposed in every newspaper. I turned back inside, where Sterling was dedicatedly guiding a young athlete through his first steps after a serious spinal injury. My journey was not just a satisfying revenge, but a liberation for my own soul and for those in similar circumstances of being trampled. I took a deep breath of the fresh morning air, no longer surrounded by red Texas dust or the fear of the arena. I looked up at the deep blue sky, feeling the absolute serenity flowing through every vein of a free man. The monster of manipulation and contempt had been defeated by its own greed and blindness. The gilded cage labeled family had swung open long ago, and I was finally, completely, truly free.